Good morning. I'm Paul Naylor, Director of Communications at the Alliance of British Drivers, and I welcome you all to another high-octane episode of Full Throttle, brought to you by the Alliance of British Drivers, hosted by myself and hopefully Brian Gregory shortly. Brian's having a few technical glitches, but will be hopefully joining us imminently. So what do we talk about here? So we cut through the noise on the issues that really matter to drivers, freedom and common sense in modern Britain. But we also look at environmental issues because we challenge the net zero agenda. So today we're delighted to welcome a fascinating guest who's deeply immersed in the world of trees, but with a perspective that challenges much of the mainstream narrative around climate policy. Mark Chester is a professional tree consultant based in Herefordshire, running Cedarwood Tree Consultants. His expertise covers everything from tree safety and planning to complex legal cases, where he's frequently called upon as an expert witness in court. He's also the driving force behind Oscar's Tree Academy, an innovative education resource designed to teach the next generation about trees and their vital role in our environment, and very much based on encouragement rather than the scaremongering that I'm sure that a lot of kids are given regarding nature today. Mark brings a grounded, practical view to the table, informed by decades working hands-on with trees and the science behind them. We'll be diving into how CO2 actually fuels plant growth, including the trees that sustain our landscapes, rather than being the villain it is often painted as. We'll explore why the relentless push for net zero targets feels not just unmanageable for everyday people and businesses, but is arguably unnecessary when you look at the bigger picture of natural carbon cycles, the biology, and realistic priorities for Britain's future. Buckle up, this is Full Throttle. And here he is, the main man, Mark Chester. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Paul.
Did you like that intro? Did you like that?
Me too. I was kind of wondering who this person was, but there we are.
I've known Mark for a number of years now. We work on projects together. I help him with Oscar's Tree Academy and also with some of the reports for Cedarwood. So it's great to have you on here, Mark. It's a bit surreal for me because it's like talking to it is talking to a friend. So it's very good. So from your professional experience with trees, which you work with on a day-to-day basis, what's the real story on CO2 as you see it? Is it truly pollution, or is it plant food essential for growth, therefore feeding animals, etc.?
It's actually a lot more complex than is often presented. So carbon dioxide is totally natural. There's a cycle. And because it's a cycle, we're not making it and destroying it. It's actually chemical reactions that are putting together carbon molecules and oxygen. And we breathe out carbon dioxide. Trees absorb it, plants absorb it, algae absorbs it as part of photosynthesis. It is completely natural. Now, if in the wrong place, the wrong concentration, it's not good. So if you have too much around you, if you are in a building and it's a warm afternoon and you feel tired, you've probably got too much carbon dioxide building up. You need fresh air. You need to move that on. Excuse me. But it's not bad. And it is needed by plants to function. Without it, they're not going to be able to thrive.
So this is probably why it's advisable to have a plant in your office.
Actually, plants in your office are great, but you don't want too many plants at night, because do you know what happens at night? They reverse the process. They actually absorb oxygen and release carbon dioxide, because carbon dioxide is only absorbed when they are photosynthesizing. And what is the key ingredient for photosynthesis?
Sunshine.
Yes, they need light. And at night, you switch the lights off.
That's interesting.
In hospitals, they will try to take plants out of wards at night because it can reduce the oxygen level and increase carbon dioxide, because you then got more organisms contributing to the CO2 in the room.
So that really does tend to hint to me as an absolute sort of unknower on such things, is that the importance of trees and plant life, it's probably never been more so.
Yes.
We need them there. We need them particularly during the lighter hours to absorb all this CO2. and to mitigate anything that's going out there. But the wider issue really is CO2 really isn't that villain that it's painted to be, as we said in the intro. As a people, as the human race generates very little CO2 compared to where it comes from other sources. So, to your knowledge, what sources does CO2 come from?
So, the CO2, I mean, if you have a volcanic eruption, that throws out so much material into the atmosphere that can cause droughts, famines. In fact, they now reckon that the French Revolution was the result of a volcanic eruption somewhere in Africa. It caused so much pollution in the atmosphere that it caused crops to fail in France, and it pushed things over the edge. The thing with trees is they are far more dynamic than just a source of absorbing CO2. I was going around my local town recently, and I saw these machines in a couple of corners that were there to clean the air. And they said, yes, this is an air cleaning machine. I thought, well, why not get a tree here? Because also trees, so there's quite a dynamic chemical reaction is taking place in which they are absorbing CO2 and releasing oxygen. And in that process, they also release water. And I don't know if you've ever been in an urban setting. I think you probably have been in one or two urban settings on a hot summer's day. And if you are in a tree-lined road, you'll notice that it's cooler. And this is because the trees are releasing water as part of the process. It's actually cooling the leaves. So they're able to keep photosynthesizing as it gets hotter. And that cools the atmosphere for us. And what we find in urban areas is where you have a lot of people, you get heat islands forming. If there's no trees, the heat islands become larger and the heat higher. It gets warmer and hotter and less pleasant. If you plant trees in them in our urban settings, which is where it's hardest to plant, it's the most difficult, it's the most resource intensive, but that's actually where they are often the most effective. So tree-lined streets, tree-lined motorways, that's where they can really have an impact because they can shield from the sun, they can cool the air, they can clean the air, and they can keep things a lot better for us.
So a lot of these net zero measures, if they let nature do what nature needs to do, they're completely unnecessary, I would imagine.
I wouldn't say it's black and white, completely unnecessary. I would say misguided.
Yeah.
So the idea that we need to stop generating CO2, well, it is natural. The thing is, it's to work out what we are trying to do. So tree planting is a really good idea. But unless you've worked out what you're doing, the idea of planting millions of trees, and there was a general election a few years back, and one party said we're going to plant 20 million trees a year, and another party said, well, plant 30 million trees a year, and another one said, we'll plant 40 million trees a year. Nobody stopped to think, why? Where are these trees coming from? They hadn't actually spoken to the tree nurseries growing the trees, who were producing possibly 100,000. One particular producer said, we can produce 100,000 trees per year. These are high quality specimen trees in containers. We don't have the capacity to suddenly produce 1 million a year. And where are all these trees going to be planted? They say, oh, we'll be planting them on farmland. Have you spoken to the farmers? And actually, it's not numbers. It's what you plant and where you plant it. So when people say to me, I want to plant a tree or I want to plant woodland, I sometimes say the first thing to do is sit on your hands.
Yeah.
Stop. Work out what it is you want to do. Why? So if you want to plant a woodland because you want to feel good, well, unless you've worked out what you're doing with it, then that feel-good feeling won't last very long. Because what people don't appreciate is you've worked with me long enough to know that trees grow, and we've done some planting schemes.
Yeah.
Now, if your viewers have been to maybe a woodland trust site or somewhere where some new trees have been planted, new woodland has been planted, you'll often find they're planting trees that are sticks. They're up to about 1 meter in height.
Yeah.
A lot of trees are planted at this size because they are affordable. They are cheap to buy, they're cheap to plant, and often people do, that's it, we've planted the trees, we've been good.
Yeah.
The thing is, if you were planting trees in that level, you'd usually planting them at about a 2-meter distance.
Yeah.
Well, it does take a genius to know that trees like beech, oak, even birch get bigger than that.
Mhm.
And unless you're taking out individual trees and reducing the density, you're going to just have this dense, dark mass.
Yeah.
And the significance is that as the trees get bigger and their branches are shaded, the branches die. And what happens with dead wood? It starts to decompose, releasing carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
So within 20 years, a woodland planted to absorb CO2 is actually now releasing carbon dioxide. So it's doing the exact reverse of what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
Unless you're actively managing it. A lot of people who plant woodlands haven't thought, right, we need to reduce the density. It's called a forest thin. We need to go in after 10 years and take out 1 in 10 of the trees.
Yeah.
And then again after 5 years. It's a bit like if you grow lettuce. If you sow some lettuce, they'll be far too dense. You take out individual ones, so the ones you want to grow have space. So actually, the reverse is happening for net zero. The trees have stopped absorbing, they're now rating, which is entirely counterintuitive.
Excellent. Well, as you can see, Brian, the regular host, has crept into the chat. Here he is.
I'm still a bit badly lagged.
Okay.
There's quite a gap between me speaking and the screen catching up. I don't know what the audio is like, but I've been struggling since I logged in this morning, and umpteen reboots and all sorts of stuff. But I managed to get in. Listening to Mark, I mean, I entirely agree with the point about spending 30 billion on, or whatever it is, on carbon capture is pointless when you can just plant some trees and they'll do the job for nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, my perspective is that it's irrelevant anyway, because if you listen to somebody like Patrick Moore, carbon dioxide is not pollution, it's our friend. If there's no carbon dioxide, we're all dead. End of. Because there's no plants for animals to eat. There's no animals for us to eat as well as plants. End of. And we actually got to the point just before we fortuitously started burning hydrocarbons, where the carbon dioxide level had got down to the point almost of plant extinction, about 170 parts per million volume. And the extinction point's about 150. If we'd gone below that and not started burning hydrocarbons, humanity wouldn't be here now. So carbon dioxide is our friend. Yeah. We can have as much as you want of it, up to 1,200 parts per million, and it's great for plant growth. You can go further than that, because nuclear submarines have, I think it's about 4,000 ppm, and typically or up to 40,000, I think, on some occasions on a nuclear submarine. It's not great. It's probably a bit high for what humans normally function at, but we can still function, and it won't have any demonstrable effect on the climate, because it's already saturated. The absorption effect of carbon dioxide is saturated. You can add as much as you want. It's only going to make smaller and smaller differences. It's like an asymptotic curve, and we got right to the top now. It's flattened out. So we couldn't achieve that anyway, because there's not enough accessible carbon in the atmosphere. I don't know, Charlotte, can you put up that graph of the red line of death, please?
The red line of death.
It is. It absolutely is the red line of death.
Yeah.
So we are in a carbon dioxide famine at the moment. This started because small marine organisms started actually absorbing carbon dioxide dissolved in seawater, because they'd found a way to turn that carbon dioxide into calcium carbonate, which they used as a shell, as protection. And as those marine organisms died, their skeletons and the sort of organic bit in the middle all sank to the bottom of the oceans, and under the huge pressures there, the shells got compressed into carboniferous rock, and the organic stuff ended up as oil. So it is. I mean, I suppose you could say it's a fossil fuel, but it came from fossils. It's not really, because if you try and burn the fossil, the calcium carbonate, you won't get very far. You have to get up to about 900 Celsius, I think, to actually get it to start burning and releasing carbon dioxide and turning back to calcium oxide, back to lime.
Yeah.
So the point is now we're pretty close to the red line of death, and we really want to be getting carbon dioxide back up again. But there's nothing wrong with plants, because they are part of the natural cycle, and they contribute to the carbon cycle. Absolutely, we should, and they look nice.
Well, they're the lungs, aren't they? They're the lungs of the planet.
Well, they certainly, the processes that are involved in photosynthesis, they actually produce oxygen, because the plant absorbs carbon dioxide to create fairly complex carbohydrates, which then the plant uses for its own structure. But in the evenings, they transpire oxygen. So basically this whole planet is a carbon dioxide recycling plant.
Right.
So it's a giant carbon dioxide recycling plant. So the last thing you want to do is get rid of carbon dioxide. That's an extremely bad move. So as I say, you can see from the graph where we are now. We are in the famine, and you can see where the optimum for plants is. So what we need to be doing is pushing it up, not trying to get rid of it.
Yeah. So just before you joined us, Brian, Mark was explaining about how there's been a number of proposals by different prospective governments saying we're going to plant this amount of trees. No, we're going to outdo you and plant millions more, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But where the real thought isn't going into it is where they're planted. And also something that I learned from Mark a long time ago, because I've worked with Mark on various tree related projects, is the distance that you put between trees as well. Because it's very important that you don't put them too close together. They've got to have space to grow. And the other thing as well that I mean, it's probably very apparent to a lot of people, but I think a lot of people also think that trees are there forever. I think that's because they're used to seeing grand old oak trees that can live up to 1,000 years. But many trees have got a lot shorter life cycle than that. I think willow is around 50, 60 years, something like that.
It's it can get up to about 100.
Yeah.
But if you manage it.
Yeah.
And this is also one of the key things that the way I describe it is that to see trees as CO2 absorbing machines is to consider it's like a black and white view in a digital world. Trees are far more than that. They clean the air. They bring us the seasons. They are important for things like breaking winds. When you've got wind tunnels, if you've got trees there, they can help to slow winds. They are also very good for things like flooding. So if you've got trees, they can slow the water flow. And they're important for all of these things. And the CO2 part really doesn't appreciate how dynamic they are. The other thing, which is quite ironic with the whole net zero agenda, is that as a tree gets older, its value increases for wildlife. So as trees get and cavities form, they then provide nesting sites for birds, bats, owls, and also lots of beetles and other things will be able to make their home. Now, the thing is that taking out all the hollowing the tree releases carbon.
Yeah.
And an old tree will have much less carbon than when it was younger, but it's now really important for wildlife.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to pick up on your comment earlier, Mark, we have a big area of natural forest fairly close to us, which is the Forestry Commission opens for dog walkers and things, and I walk around it a lot. And the closest area to us, they've planted trees so close together that it has formed exactly what you described, and most of them are now stunted and are in the process of dying because there's not enough space for them. They're not getting enough sunlight. They've done absolutely everything wrong, and these are people who are supposed to be experts. The damn Forestry Commission, for God's sake. You know?
Can I just share something with you which might surprise you? Quite a few of the people running the Woodland Trust are not tree people. They're people who are good at running charities and at fundraising. And a number of the people who are the Forestry Commission are not forestry people, they're not tree people, they're very good at managing an organisation.
Yeah.
I've actually had encounters with Forestry Commission officials who have proposed tree planting species lists that are totally inappropriate for a site, and I've had to battle with them to get them to accept. So if you fell some trees that require a forestry felling license, you have to commit to plant new trees. It's an agreed density, agreed species, and to maintain them for a period of at least 10 years and to replace anything that dies. And if you don't do that, you are in trouble and you may face fines. And I've just had a client where what they were going to do, the trees were going to die. And so we've had to come up with a solution where the landowner could actually take individual trees out of this woodland planting and plant them elsewhere in his holding so they wouldn't die. And it took quite a battle to persuade the officials that what they wanted to do wasn't going to work. So we have this with our officials. The other thing that we're trying, people who have influence are trying to raise this. We want to move away from planting woodlands. Woodlands are important, but you've got to know what you're doing, and they only provide certain habitat. So there's, I think, only 6 different species of birds that commonly are found and nest in woodlands. Most of them are in open-grown trees. So encouraging farmers to plant hedgerows and to plant hedgerow trees or trees in corners of fields is the best way forward, so the trees have space to grow. To plant trees in our city centres, in our streets, the places where it's actually expensive to do and they take space, but it's actually really important. That is the most appropriate way of doing it. And roadsides, where often we don't want things that interfere. So how often do you see trees in the middle of a motorway? Well, that's where we really want them, because they're cleaning the air and they also calm drivers. And we're recognizing the multifaceted ways that trees help us, rather than just saying, we need lots of trees to absorb carbon dioxide. Well, they're going to do that anyway.
It would certainly make a prettier central reservation, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, the only point is if something goes through the barrier and into the central reservation, hitting a tree is not actually a very fun thing to do.
Well, no, but there is that.
And unfortunately, they seem to be replacing a lot of the central barriers, the Armco ones now, with concrete, which the initial impact's not so good, but at least it forces the vehicle to keep going in the direction it's going rather than to go across towards stuff coming the other way. But certainly, there's no reason. I've never understood why you couldn't, when you've got a cutting with a motorway in it, there's never any trees on the top, of where the gully comes down. And I would have thought that's an ideal place to put them, spaced along the lines that Mark suggested. Although, would that have sort of, depending on how close you put them, it could have a bit of a wind tunnel effect. But I think that would look quite nice, actually, aesthetically. I'm not sure about planting them in the central reservation because of the safety.
Sometimes it's planting smaller trees, but also sometimes it's planting hedgerow trees such as hawthorn, hill maple, though they do need to be managed. And sometimes when you see the machines going along and they're cutting the trees back, it can look drastic, but it's part of managing it. And one of the things that we need to recognize when we're looking at trees being planted, and I was actually talking to Paul about this because we're developing an idea that we can guide people more on what to plant, how to plant it, because a lot of the tree planting that's being done is not being done properly. No. But you've also got to look at timescales. So if you're looking to plant trees, say, in a retail park, in the grounds of a supermarket, there's little point in planting trees that might take 50 years to mature, because the chances are that whole landscape will be changed in the next 10 years. So planting trees very quickly is good. If you wanted to plant trees for memorials, maybe for the millennium or for the coronation, there was a couple of years. Planting trees are going to be here in 100 years' time. It's important. And often people choose pretty trees because they want a tree that looks pretty, has blossom in the summer or in the spring. But they haven't really thought, right, how long will this tree live? So some of those trees, they will only live, as Paul said earlier, for maybe 50 or 60 years. There are people who will plant trees to commemorate the birth of a child, and the trees died before the child got to university.
Yes.
Which isn't really the plan. And you've also, when you're planting trees, the whole space thing. Now, one of the saddest sites I've ever, and I've been working with trees now for over 25 years. I used to work for a local authority, and I would visit sites with protected trees to look at requests for pruning and whether they're acceptable or requests to fell. And I visited one site, and it was a new house, new estate, and they'd got a cedar in the back garden. And I just commented, oh, you'll have to sort that tree out because that's going to totally outgrow the garden. In fact, in 10 years' time, that'll be growing into your conservatory. And the lady stopped and asked me to leave. She said, my dad bought me that tree when I got married. Oh, he died last year. Right. The emotional turmoil there is huge. The tree is there. It is going to grow to be a giant. It's going to be a tree of over 2 meters diameter. It will totally outgrow the garden. The fact you've got it in with emotional connections is irrelevant to the tree. The tree is going to grow to And this is the whole thing of if you want to get a tree, and when they bought it from the garden centre, it was me at all. What are you planting? Why are you planting it? How big is it going to grow? Is it going to give you the longevity that you want? And sometimes people are better off buying a tree and putting it in a container in the garden. And if it's a special tree, if you're going to move house, you can take it with you.
Yeah.
If you're planting trees because you want to do your bit for the environment, what part of your bit for the environment is it you want to do? If you want to plant a tree for habitat, then there's certain trees that are far better for that. If you want to, I like oaks. Oaks need a lot of space. They have invasive roots. They take a long time to grow. And if you've got a modern garden, you probably will find it outgrows the garden. So this is the whole thing. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And if you're doing it because you want to be part of net zero, I'd say to people, there's far better ways you can contribute to reducing your impact on the environment. Put solar panels on your roof.
Okay. All right. Just a question with a personal interest. What's the lifespan of a poplar?
It depends on how you manage it. So most poplars live for under a century. Now, if you manage this and you prune it for longevity, there are some of the black poplars, which are quite special. They can get to 200 years, but they're not a long-lived tree.
Okay. Well, the reason I asked the question, Mark, is there is a primary school quite close to us with a long row of quite closely planted poplars. And if one of them comes down, it'll come down right through our roof because there must be 140, 150 feet high now. And they bend a lot in the wind.
Yes.
And when they die, we're in the firing line.
Oh, yes. You have got, and Paul will know this, the Lombardy poplar, which is the tall, narrow one. They're often planted because they grow quickly and they provide screening and they provide that they stop wind flows.
Yeah.
They typically live for about 60 to 70 years and they snap. And they're a tree that will break sometimes with very little warning, or they're one of the ones where if you have a storm, they're one of the ones we expect to fall.
Yeah.
Great.
So
okay. We have a row, and it literally there must be 15 or 20 trees, and they're all close packed. And the nearest one, if it comes down, will go straight across our roof.
Yes. I can often reassure people about tree safety, and they'll say, "Oh, well, I see that tree moving. What if?" It's unlikely. Lombardy poplars, I can offer you no reassurance.
Can you drop me an email to confirm that? Because I need to take that to the parish council and to the local school.
Yes.
brian.gregory@abd.org.uk.
I'll pass that on to Mark.
Because we've raised this with the parish council and they say, oh, it's no problem. But those trees have been there, to my knowledge, about 35 to 40 years now.
Yeah.
Because we lived here close to it.
Yeah. Are you in a house or a bungalow, Brian?
House.
I'd start sleeping downstairs.
Thanks for that.
Seriously, Brian, if there was a storm, I wouldn't be sleeping in an upstairs room that is, if the trees are beyond your back garden, I would want to make sure I was as far away as possible in a stormy night.
Right. Great.
Yeah.
Well,
And
we are.
This isn't hyperbole. The
No.
Lombardy poplar, it is tall, it is narrow, it is brittle. They were often planted up until this 1970s, 80s as a crop for matchsticks.
Right.
And then the matchstick industry went over to Poland, and they're now no longer needed. But they sound, and also sometimes if you've got a school, the local authority would a whole load of them very cheaply, and they are convenient. You plant them, they give you a feature. But they are a tree where I don't know many tree consultants worth their salt who can give you an assurance that that tree is safe.
Well, surely, even if it's providing screening, it doesn't need to be that tall, does it? Yeah.
No, you're calling me Shirley again.
Yeah.
He started calling me Shirley again. Yeah, but I mean, I can understand it from aesthetic point of view, but my concern is obviously that if they come down, it's an enormous insurance claim. Well, if we happen to survive the crash, it's an enormous insurance claim for the school and for the local council and the parish council, who are all very sanguine about the situation at the moment.
Yeah.
Where are you based, Brian?
In the northeast of England, near Stockton-on-Tees.
There was a video on LinkedIn. I do some advice for a company in Coventry called Beechwood Tree Services. They did a post on LinkedIn yesterday where they took out a row of previously pollarded, cut back Lombardy poplars.
Yeah.
They took in a big machine and they put the trunk straight into an industrial scale grinder that chipped them all up into biomass. And they managed to take out all these trees in 2 days. I mean, it isn't cheap, but for me, those are the one tree that, and people who want to plant willow trees in school grounds. Paul and I met somebody who wanted to sponsor. They ran an education project, and they wanted to do a thank you to their clients. And they would plant trees in primary schools. And I had to say to them, you could cause major problems if there's no open space for the trees, and you're planting it to car parks, so the roots go and lift the tarmac, or get into the rains. And they went, ooh, maybe not such a good idea.
Quite often these things are done with the best of intentions.
Oh, the best intentions,
but advised.
Yeah.
So Mark, we've heard endless claims about the drastic net zero measures and how they're vital to save the planet. But how do trees and nature in general fit into that? Are we overcomplicating something that nature already handles?
Yes.
Yeah.
We are overcomplicating something, but we're also missing the big picture. Mm-hmm. So we need to be looking after the environment. We need to be looking after nature. They were saying, I'm struggling. And so it is understanding the whole complexity of nature. It's understanding how nature functions, the dynamics, the space that is needed, proper habitats. There's also recognizing that climate is changing. We're getting warmer, wetter winters. We're getting more extremes of heat in the summer, and it is affecting some trees' ability to function. So it is planting trees for the future, but it is working with nature rather than imposing a target that somebody set in an office one day and said, this is where we need to be. Now, there might have been some science for it. I'm not saying it's random, but quite a few of these targets, when it is somebody artificially setting it rather than saying to industry, we want you to find improvements, efficiencies, can we do what we're doing better, then industry is very good at finding solutions. Whereas if they're given a target, we're going to stop making petrol engines by 2030. Right. Well, we might make a better petrol engine. We might make a more efficient one with fewer pollutions. But you've now stopped us doing that. And actually, there can be alternatives. And so it's being more informed. It's appreciating that trees are not just machines to absorb CO2. Yeah. They do a whole lot more.
Yeah. I mean, one of the key points that we make at the Alliance of British Drivers is, and it generally comes up as the first point that we make, is the climate is changing, but it always has, and it always will. This isn't driven by human activity to the extent that we're being told that it's driven by.
No. It has an influence, but it's a relatively minor one, and there are so many other long, medium, and short-term cycles concerned with planetary motion, variations in solar activity, and stuff like that, which affects ocean currents, and then the ocean currents drive the climate. Those things are the prevailing ones, and we have to adapt to those because we can't do anything about them. As we've done throughout history.
If I can share a couple of stats that I've heard in recent times. So trees matter, planting trees matter, but it's planting the right tree in the right place for the right reason. So if you take the whole globe and all of the CO2 output for the whole globe, the whole of the United Kingdom produces about 2.2% of the entire output of the whole globe. If we shut down the whole of the UK, so there's no hospitals, no schools, no roads, no traffic, no heating, no medicine, all that goes, it would make such a small difference compared to China and America, which between them contribute over half of what is produced. The other stat that I thought was quite fascinating was how in this country, because we want to meet net zero, we have made energy so expensive that quite a few of our heavy energy using industries have shut down and exported their production overseas.
To China and India.
So China, I think it was during 2022, 23 and 24, made more steel than the UK has made since the start of the Industrial Revolution in the 1700s. So the amount they made in 3 years was more than the UK made in 3 centuries. And they're producing it. They're building one coal-fired power station every 2 weeks. It's phenomenal, and they're just doing it. And yes, they're looking at clean energy and they're looking at solar panels, but they are doing all the dirty work for us that we used to do, and we think that we're doing a good job because we're not now being dirty. Well, that's because we've exported it. It's still being produced. It's just being produced somewhere where they're not so concerned about standards.
And of course, their big concern, India and China, is increasing living standards. And they won't allow. They will pay lip service to the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Control in the UN and all the rest of these agencies, but basically they will not compromise their industrial and economic efficiency while we are destroying ours. And this is very germane to me, because you mentioned companies closing down. I used to work for a titanium pigment company, and the titanium pigment industry uses huge amounts of energy. The factory at which I was based was part of a company that went into Chapter 11 bankruptcy when they came out. Guess who bought all the assets? The Chinese. And the Chinese are now pouring over the factory where I used to work at Greetham, which is on the coast near Hartlepool. And they will have stripped out all the intellectual property related to running that plant, which was very efficient. And it will all be exported to China, and eventually they'll shut the plant down. And all the people that work there they're already in the process of being made redundant.
It is so short term, and it's unfortunate. There's people who there's been a lack of intellectual rigor.
Yes, absolutely.
Instead of looking at the realities, yes, clean air is important. Energy efficiency is important. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? And then for me, the whole role of trees, the role of trees, sometimes it involves asking awkward questions. We want to build lots of houses. Yes. Where are we building them? How are we building them? Are we giving people good amenity space? Are we planting trees that can actually be there for the long term in these settings? Or are we planting a few trees because we want people to feel good? And are we building on a floodplain in the first place? That's the other big thing. Absolutely. I mean, I completely agree. But the often intellectual rigor, it takes second place to political expediency.
That's the problem, I think, Mark.
When the mistakes are made, the politicians who made them have often long since left office, and it is then for others to try and pick up the pieces.
Yeah,
and so,
absolutely.
Do trees matter? Yes, I encourage your members to be looking to plant trees or to be supporting planting trees, but it's doing them in the right place.
Yeah,
it's for the right reason. I'm encouraging parish councils to plant trees. But again, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? How are you doing it? And getting professional guidance on what to do.
Yeah.
And then it's also next for the future.
Yeah, it's also down to the management of the trees as well. And whilst, as you alluded to a little bit earlier on, sometimes when these trees are cut back or pollarded, they can look initially rather unsightly. And people go, oh, what have you done to that? You've killed it. Give it a year, 18 months, and it's come back to look something like it did before. Only it's been managed, and it's now probably no longer a hazard, as in the case that Brian's highlighted close to his home. Or it could just be that for various reasons that it needed to be cut back. I mean, it might have a lot of deadwood in the crown or whatever. But there's all sorts of issues. But just one last big question mark really is what frustrates you most about how the net zero agenda is being presented to the public, and what practical alternatives would you suggest for a balanced approach to the environmental stewardship?
I think this idea that CO2 is the enemy. It isn't the enemy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seeing trees as simply machines to absorb the CO2 and plant lots of trees and then we feel good is actually quite disrespectful, because trees are far more dynamic. So trees matter in the right place. We need to be planting trees in the right place. They do so much. They help our mental health. They help clean the air. They help with things like heat, keeping environments cooler in the summer, warmer in the winter. They're there for wildlife. So enjoy them for what they actually are, rather than seeing them as the solution to net zero, where they're a lot more dynamic and complex. And then look at some of the things where we can do properly more efficiently. Yes, renewable energy is fantastic. Have vehicles running on more efficient hydrocarbon engines. I do a lot of mileage. I do a lot of long distance mileage. And for me, a diesel engine is really efficient for doing that. Yes, diesel in an urban setting isn't ideal, but then you can have alternatives. So it's being realistic. It's using things more efficiently. It's letting the private sector find solutions to reducing energy use and making energy more cleanly, which there is the agenda for it. But when we let industry go and lead this drive for solutions, then we tend to get really good outcomes. Whereas when it is politician-led, they often tend to back the wrong outcomes.
They should go back to what used to be called BATNIC, best available technology, not entailing excessive cost. So optimize the solution, but let competition between different technologies evolve and find the optimal one, rather than saying it's electric and that's it. When
we are covering fields with solar panels, the logic is gone.
Yes.
When you're covering roof spaces with solar panels, that makes sense. And putting batteries into houses to store the energy, that makes sense. But covering large areas of countryside with solar panels to generate electricity, why? Why on earth are you doing this?
Especially if it's good arable land that should have crops on it.
Or even pasture land. And we have to work out the whole thing of you now putting concrete and all the infrastructure into a field, and then at some point there's got to be removed. And then what do we do with the solar panels when their lifetime has ended?
Well, I was telling Mark yesterday, Brian, about that story that came up as a result of one of our Transport Reality Group meetings, where there was a field with absolutely loads and loads and loads of solar panels, and then there was a hailstorm, and the hailstorm broke practically every one of them. So, it's
but then the problem is, even when you've removed them, the stuff that's leached out of the solar panels into the soil then means you've got a huge remediation job to get rid of the layer of topsoil that's contaminated with the heavy metal elements and whatnot that are in the panels. and it might not be usable for even as pasture or arable growth for ages, if at all ever.
Exactly.
Can I just? I'm going to. I think our time is probably beginning to draw to a close.
It is. Yeah, it is.
And I'm going to share a couple of things. First of all, some trees do need pruning. I'm based in Herefordshire, and Hereford is the near. I call it a town. It's not a big place. But some years ago, I was asked to survey a couple of willow trees by the car park of the leisure centre in Hereford. They were doing some renovations, and these trees have been identified for felling. And I said, "There's no need to fell these trees. They're perfectly fine. They need some pruning." Well, they were retained. They were pollarded, and I thought, "Ooh, it was quite serious." That's where you cut them back to a trunk, and they regrew. And the new growth was smaller branches, not so heavy. There's also a willow tree in the middle of a roundabout in the middle of Hereford, and for those people who know it, it's where the old cattle market used to be. This tree wasn't pruned, and in a storm, it split in two, and a lot was lost. And I realised that actually actively managing the other trees, they're still there 10 years later. The other one I want to share with you is that there's a new housing estate being built just leaving Hereford. It's the north of Hereford, and it's the road up to Leominster, if anybody knows the area. So this is a new estate of probably about 40 or 50 houses in a field. The hedgerow fronting the road has gone, so all that wildlife has gone. These houses are now having 3 solar panels per roof, where you could quite easily put in at least 6. And then they're doing the landscaping, and they've planted a beech tree. I think it's beech. It's either beech or it's an upright oak in one of the front gardens. I'm going to try and stop and take a photo of that because they haven't thought it through. This tree is going to totally outgrow the setting. It'll dominate. It'll cause shading. This is the wrong tree for that setting. And I can see within 10 years the pressure to remove the tree.
Because of the roots will spread so far, and they'll be undermining the foundations of the house and growing out into the road.
So this is the whole thing of being informed and having evidence-based approaches.
Well, Mark, it's been absolutely brilliant chatting with you.
Enjoyed this.
It's been really interesting, Mark. I apologise that I had technical problems to get in, but I got here. The lag seems to, in my connection seems to have reduced a bit, the latency problem. So, it's been really useful and very informative. And for me, it's certainly there are some actions to be taken as a result of our discussion, undoubtedly.
There you go.
What we're trying to do is, Paul alluded that we've got an education social enterprise called Oscar's Tree Academy, and we want to engage with the next generation and the people who are, I call it, they're grown-ups. So the grown-ups know reality. The grown-ups be engaging with them in an informed way, and we've got various resources to inform people so they know the reality. They know how trees work, what trees work in what situation. So this is something that we're doing so that we have people growing up who actually understand how trees work, what to plant, and the seasons, etc.
Can we put something in driving sense about what Mark's just mentioned, Paul? Because it's useful to our members can find out, and also obviously this podcast is going to be circulated. So I think that's useful. The more people that understand that trees have to be carefully managed, and you have to think very much about the setting in which you're going to place a tree, its expected lifespan, how much its root system is going to extend, stuff like that. That clearly at the moment are not being considered at all.
No, exactly. So Brian, I'm just going to share though, the environment matters. Green spaces matter. And planning for the future matters. Now, I work closely with somebody called Kevin Martin, who is the keeper of the collection of trees at Kew Gardens, and he is having to future-proof the collection because so many of their trees, which were chosen by the Georgians and the Victorians, are struggling to cope with the dry climate. And they've been taken from places where they look pretty and the collectors like them, but they're not suiting. So the common beech tree, Fagus sylvatica, has shallow roots. It doesn't like dry conditions. It is dying out in the southeast. The oriental beech, Fagus sylvatica orientalis, is thriving because it's genetically wired to be able to cope with dry conditions.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges that we have at the moment is that there's a big drive to plant native trees. Well, if the native trees can't cope with dry summers, they're going to die.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's something that's maybe not native, but can suit the setting and is equipped, then that can be one for the future. And actually, Kevin has had a real challenge trying to present this, because it is challenging the perceived thinking of what is right. He's just done a paper about the trees in London, and the Mayor of London didn't want to hear it because it.
Well, that's very unusual. Selective deafness doesn't seem to affect Sadiq Khan very much at all.
Oh, he's not a great guy, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. I think actually he walks around the city with headphones on, earmuffs or whatever.
Yeah,
when he's sitting in his, umpteen-ton armor-plated Land Rover, or whatever it is.
He's got those earphones on for two very good reasons, Brian. Every now and then it's saying left, right. That's when he's walking. But for the most, it says breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Mark, it's been an absolute joy having you on the show. And, we go way back. We can be going way forward on different projects we work on. So it's been really great having you on here. And I'm sure Brian would agree. It'd be fantastic for you to come on.
It has, absolutely, yeah. You must
come on again. Yes.
We'll review progress in a couple of years' time or whatever's the appropriate time interval to review what's been going on. Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm sure Paul can share a little bit about the stuff we're doing with Oscar and how I want to inform people. I want people to know what they're doing, to do things with understanding, with open eyes. And I was walking around a school with a caretaker, and we've got newly planted trees. They've been overstaked. The ties were there. The trees are snapping. And I explained to the caretaker what to do. He went, "Why did nobody tell me that?" Yeah. And that's what we want to do. I want people to now know, though, why did nobody tell me? I want to be able to let them know.
Yeah.
Mark,
okay. Hopefully we've helped you to do that. Cheers. Thank you, Mark. It's been really useful.
Thank you.
Bye for now. Bye.